Good morning, everyone. My name is Trish Eastburn. I'm the Netsuite practice lead at BPM. Had over 12 years of experience working with Netsuite, and I look forward to helping you understand a little bit more how Netsuite works and how it can leverage your business to suit your current needs. This is a demo account. So some of the information in here is a little stale. You can see here some 2017 numbers, but main thing to know about Netsuite, this is what we call your home dashboard. So actually every one of these tabs that you see, menu items across the top that you see, have their own dashboard. So for example, I don't want to give myself away here, but if I go to lists and click on lists, this in and of itself is a dashboard. And you can customize each and every one of these tabs to have a very specific dashboard to it. Most of the time when people are talking about the dashboard, they're referring to this home dashboard. It's the landing page when you first log into NetSuite, and so it's the first thing that comes up when you log in. A couple things to note. You'll notice here up in the upper right-hand corner, I'm in this Dilly demo account. This is the account that I'm in, and I'm in as the role of administrator. So administrator, as some of you may know, kind of has the keys to the kingdom. I can do everything within NetSuite, including the configuration of NetSuite and such. But as you change roles, in some cases people may have multiple roles. Most of the time they have a single role. But if you have multiple roles and you change roles, your dashboard changes along with that role. So it's important to know that the dashboard itself is tied to the role that you're logged into with NetSuite. And that can serve a really good purpose. Let's say you're in a very small organization and you wear multiple hats, right? we're all familiar with people who do multiple accounting things, accounting tasks, where the delineation or segregation of responsibilities may not be as easy to do, so you're wearing multiple hats. You may have multiple roles in that case. So if I'm doing a little bit of accounts receivable, I might have an accounts receivable role. I might want to see things like the collections that we're seeing here. Whereas if I then switch over to more of an accounting type role, I might have things like financial reports or reconciliations on that particular dashboard. So what I see changes with what role I have. Okay, within the dashboard itself, these are called portlets. So these little individual windows are called portlets. Again, this is where the customization really comes in of your dashboard. So I can move these things around. I can change the layout. So for example, if I don't like the kind of the 3-screen, I can change the layout here and make it I can make it a single one. I can make it bigger on one side and smaller on the other side. So depending how you like the look and feel of your dashboard, you can change how it looks. I'm going to just switch back. Now, sometimes when you switch back, just kind of as a FYI, when you change back, you might see that things have moved around. So now you can see that I don't have anything on the left-hand side anymore. But it's really easy to move things around on the dashboard. So on each portlet, if I kind of hover over this top part, you can see that I get this little white crosshatch. And I also get these little icons that appear in the upper right-hand corner typically. When I get the little crosshatch, and I'm just going to use this one over here for shortcuts, I can then just click on it and move it over to where I really want it. So I can move the reminders back over where I needed them. And I'll move that one over too. Okay, so really easy to move around the screen. And again, if let's say I don't want this at the top, I can move this down. There are many ways to have the information that you want to see first and foremost at the top of the page. Similarly, sometimes these things take up a lot of real estate. I can collapse these by simply clicking on the header, on that header information, and now this information is collapsed. It's not disappeared from your dashboard, it's still there, but I'm able to kind of save some real estate, if you will, by collapsing this information. Some other components about the dashboard, about each individual portlet, it's important to some degree to know what kind of portlet it is. So for example, in this case, I'm just going to click on this these three dots and click the setup. And I can see that in this case, this is a custom content portlet. You don't need to know today what that means. It's helpful to understand what type of portlet it is as we go into the personalization aspect of it. If I scroll down to this one, click down on this one, we can see this is probably one of the most popular of the dashboard portlets that we use, is this custom search. So I mentioned that the dashboard is probably one of the features of NetSuite that I like the most. Probably right behind that is the ability to do saved searches. We're not going to talk about saved searches in today's session, but saved searches basically is a way to query the data within NetSuite. And if you can query the data on NetSuite, you can put it on your dashboard. So we'll talk a little bit in a bit about how we go about adding a saved search to the dashboard. Depending on which portlet we're talking about, there might be different settings that you're able to change. So in this particular case, all I have is this setup and remove. But if I go down to the saved search one we saw, I also have the addition of reset and edit. So there are additional features or setups depending on what type of portlet it is. In this case, I have setup and then I have new shortcuts. So they're not all consistent in this case. In the case of a graph, I have many other things, including, as you can see here, the ability to download this graph into into PDF, or I can actually export it as well into Excel or some other product. In some cases, if I have data that's changed and I want to see it immediately, and this goes back to the poll question we asked about timely information. If I make a change to the underlying data, I might want to see that right away on my portlet. There's this little refresh button that immediately pulls in the most current information within your system. So again, the idea of NetSuite is there's no batches to any of the transactions. When you make a change to something, it hits automatically. The other thing that's really nice about the dashboard is many of these screens have hyperlinks. So for example, in this particular case, I have a hyperlink here to this. In this case, it's an invoice. And I can right mouse click. There's some navigation shortcuts within NetSuite. I can right mouse click and I can either choose to open this in a new tab or in a new window. I personally like to do it in a new tab. So at the top now, I have a separate tab that's opening. And you can have many tabs open within NetSuite at the same time. To my knowledge, there isn't a limitation on that, although to be somewhat effective in your work, you probably want to not have too many open, but I know some people work better in that type of environment where they have multiple windows open. You can also move it onto different screens. So actually in my setup, I have 3 screens. I typically open them in one, but sometimes it's nice to have it on a separate screen and be able to do comparisons between 2 screens. So here I am in an invoice, and I can actually see the details of what makes up that invoice that's on my home dashboard. And if I were to, in this case, I can't edit it because it's likely in a closed period dating back to December of 2017. But I could potentially edit this or make changes to it. And then again, it would then reflect on my dashboard if I made a change. You also can see in this particular case, as I mentioned before, this is actually a saved search. I can tell that the results of the search, there are actually 7 results. And so all 7 of them are showing up on this particular portlet. But if I scroll down a little bit to my all clients US West, you can see here, this is also a saved search. And I actually have 133 on here that are showing, 133 in total, but only the top 10 are showing. Again, this is one of those settings that I can change. If I click on that setup there, you can see I have this option to change the result size. So once you click on setup, you can see, and again, this changes depending on what kind of portlet we're talking about. But I can change how many of these I want to see on my screen. And again, it's a matter of real estate on my homepage. So if I want to say, let's say I want to have 50 on here, I can change this to have 50. And now I'm showing 50 different clients that are in our US West region. I can also page down, right? So this little drop down here allows me to page down. It also has all of the functionality that NetSuite has. You can see here right now, there's like this little triangle next to the word name. That tells me what sort order it's using. So right now it's doing an ascending sort order on the name. But if I wanted to actually change it to be on email address, I would do that. But if I click on it, I now have the little arrow triangle next to email, and it's now sorted in email order. If I click it again, it'll turn it into descending order. So now my triangle has turned upside down, and I now see it in descending order. So again, really easy to curtail or define what information you want in an individual portlet. And if I wanted to see my entire list of 133, again, this is a hyperlink. And so I can just click on it, and it's going to now take me to the saved search that returns all 133 records. And then all of those same functionality exists. So again, I'm sorted by email. If I want to change it here back to in ascending order by name, I just simply click on the word name, the name field here, and it changes the sort order. In addition, in some cases, and this is a good example, as you can see, this office phone and fax don't have any information in there. I can change the underlying search and put whatever fields I want that are most pertinent for me. So in this case, for example, maybe office phone isn't relevant, and maybe fax isn't relevant. Maybe I want something else. I can change the underlying search and have the fields that I want visible on my home portlet. So that's how you can navigate around. And again, as I said, each individual portlet, you can change. You can change some of the information on each portlet as well without going into the setup. So for example, in this particular case, top 10 clients by balance, you notice that my definition here is this period. It's very easy for me to just say, you know what, I want to see the entire fiscal year for last year. So I select that drop down, and now my graph has changed to include that parameter that I've just changed. So let's say I go in one day and I accidentally remove something. So now all of a sudden my collections thing has disappeared. Extending the dashboard is what we call personalizing the dashboard. So when I click personalize, and here's where the type of portlet matters, you can see here that I have all of these options to add to my portlet. So in the case of a custom search, if I want to add a saved search to that, I can come into the personalize, select custom search, and it's going to add a custom search portlet to my home dashboard. And I can now set it up and add any search, any saved search that I have predefined. So if I click on that here, for example, and I wanted to click my add projects perhaps, and again, I can define how many results I want to see. Again, all of these different things that changes the way the portlet looks. But if I add all projects, I now have my custom search on my portlet. And again, I can move it around, put it where I want it to be, etc.
Hi, Trish. Just one question that came in, and I just thought I'd share right now because the timing is right. Are you tied to only these types of portlets that can be displayed, or can you create custom content that appears in a portlet?
So that's a custom portlet. That's a pretty getting into a little bit more of an advanced customization. But yes, you can actually design your own portlet and put pertinent information that might not be part of quote unquote standard NetSuite.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So if we have clients on the line that are familiar with using NetSuite, and they're also familiar with dashboards and using some of the out-of-box dashboards, but they need some assistance with creating some of those customized portlets that leverage saved searches, we can help out there too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And you can see there are quite a number of different types of portlets here. The other thing I just wanted to point out is there is a limit, at least on the home dashboard, of how many you can have on each page. So in this case, custom saved searches, I have 4 remaining. So this is not the total number that you're allowed, but this is how many are remaining on this particular, on your home dashboard. So once you've expended those, you either need to remove one of the custom searches from your dashboard. So let's say I decide I don't really want this all projects one, I can remove it, and now my custom saved search count goes back up to 5. So there is a little bit of a limitation there, but for the most part, you can add quite a bit of information to get you what you need. And we'll talk a little bit about a custom tab in a bit. That really then extends what you're able to put on a dashboard. One of my favorite dashboards is these KPI indicators. So I'm going to go ahead and add those. NetSuite comes with some standard KPIs. And again, very easy to set up. There are standard ones. So I don't really do cases. I don't really want any cases on here. I can simply remove those. And I'm going to go ahead and add ones that are relevant for me. So in my case, I'm really concerned right now about cash flow. So I want to see my bank balance. I might want to see my, probably not Netsuite, I might want to see my expenses, and I want to see my income and net cash flow. And very easily, you can see I get an option for what range I want to choose. In this case, because my data in this demo account is a little old, I'm going to go ahead and change it to be something a little bit more pertinent. So I'm going to say this fiscal year versus last fiscal year. And again, there are many, many, many different options within NetSuite to be able to do this comparison. So this fiscal year, and we'll just do a couple of them because I don't want to spend the time doing this. Last fiscal year, boom, okay. And there you can see, again, at a glance, a comparison for the periods that I defined, this fiscal year and last fiscal year. Notice I also have this little graph, so if I want to see a graphic like this, I can click on it and it gives me a trend graph. And again, what kind of trend graph it is, it's very, very user-friendly.
And Trish, another question is coming in. Are there any special permissions or special training that's required to create these? You know, you're doing a great job of explaining how to set these up. If some of the people on the phone are interested, what else can they do to learn more about doing this? Can you explain a little bit about the process in which we help our clients set these up and the tools and techniques we provide so that they can do this later on?
Yeah, I'm actually going to answer the first part of that question a little differently. So anyone can set up their own home dashboard. Anyone can set up their own dashboard, assuming that permission, it's not a permission. Assuming they know they can do that. However, I could not, for example, add a client list or a customer list if I don't have permission to that record, right? So there are permissions that are granted within NetSuite that dictate what things I can and can't see within the system. So I am limited in creating something based on the permission that I have. So if I'm an accounts payable clerk, for example, I probably can see vendors. I can probably see vendor bill transactions and potentially payment transactions, but I might not be able to see customer invoices. So it is driven by what permissions are granted to my particular role. And again, role-based. So I might have a different role that does have those permissions, and then I could add that to that particular dashboard under that role, but I couldn't do it under my AP dashboard, for example. Anybody should be able to modify or update or have on their dashboard the things that are pertinent to their particular role. And we're going to talk about a custom tab here in just a minute. Shortcuts are one of those really helpful portlets within NetSuite. I use the shortcuts portlet quite a bit for things that I do repeatedly. It allows me to just, with one click, takes me to that particular part of the system. So in this case, I'm clicking income statement. It's actually taking me to a report, which is the income statement report. This can also take me to a transaction. So for example, if I click enter a new bill and I'm the AP person, it's taking me directly to where I can enter a vendor bill. So again, those shortcuts should be kind of helpful in how you are conducting your business on a day-to-day basis. You will also see on this home dashboard that we have this navigation portlet. This is a fairly new portlet within NetSuite. It basically takes the place of the shortcuts. Some people like this particular layout a little bit better. Again, that's something we can help you do to tailor the navigation portlet versus using the shortcuts. It's just a different way to see and get to the same information. These are also, this little star up here is also the shortcuts. So some people prefer to not use the real estate on their home dashboard for the shortcuts, and they just use the little star here. I'm the same way with recent records. This little half window, half clock, or 3/4 clock, is a recent records. So if I'm going in and out of the same transaction, multiple times or going back to it, you can use that. You can also put the recent records on your dashboard. You may have seen when I was in personalization that there was recent records here. If you prefer not to use the 3/4 clock, you can add recent records as a portlet. So there you can see it's exactly the same as if I hover over this list, my recent records portlet. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about publishing and the custom tab. So one of the as I've been saying, that I'm mostly talking about the home dashboard. And for most customers, I say, you know what, the home dashboard, you should allow the user to be able to make changes, kind of back to Brian, the question that Brian fielded there. I want the users to be able to change their home dashboards to suit their needs. But maybe there is, particularly if you have a sales organization, maybe I want there to be a more consistent way that people see the data across my organization. One way to do that is to create what I call a custom tab. So this cash flow tab is a tab we created specifically to have information about cash flow, particularly in the time that we're in right now. Cash flow is becoming a very important metric for most companies. So I can create a tab. Maybe the tab is directed to your sales organization, and it has very specific information about your sales statuses or your opportunities coming in, that type of thing. You can create a tab, and I can share this tab, this cash flow tab in this case, with other members of my organization who have access to NetSuite. And I can make it where they can't actually change anything on it. So it's a way to really allow your users to have a consistent view of what's going on in the company. So if I were to publish this, for example, maybe to the CFO, potentially to the CEO, maybe to my accounting manager, I want them all to be able to go into this cash flow dashboard and see exactly the same thing. So we do that through publishing, and we lock the dashboard so that it can't be changed. So you can see here, unlike what I was doing before, now in this case I don't actually have it locked, but what would happen is you couldn't even move these portlets around. They are what they are. It's really just a view only in this particular case. So here you can see that I've added a report. This is actually a saved search portlet for the cash flow. So here's my saved search called cash flow report. Here's my graphic. I'm going to go back to a quarterly view here. So I can see on a quarterly basis what my average days to pay are, my average days overdue as a graphic form, and then here's some of those KPIs that we talked about earlier. So total bank balance, net cash flow, and again, I can change what periods I'm looking at, and then my financial ratios. So it's a really nice way to, again, just reiterating, right? It's a really nice way to provide consistent information or consistent data to other members of your organization.